you know, the thing is, I'm contemplating this as a conservative move, even though the move is going to be, could be 300%. I mean, it's quite conservative. Like everyone in the alt season is talking about 50x or 100x, and here we are talking about maybe we can do a 3x, you know. And actually, I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed with a 3x. Okay. And so naturally, what are the conversations that I'm having with certain people in Dtravel? All-time highs. Really, I'm actually all-time highs on my mind. Yeah, bizarrely. Yeah, I think if we do have a crazy crypto market explosion, this alt season that everyone's been hoping for hasn't really come, and maybe is coming now. Like finally, when everyone has sold their altcoins, or the altcoins are at all-time lows, or a lot of altcoins have crashed, maybe we're going to get the craziest altcoin bull market ever. And my theory, and you've heard my theories about this WXY higher time frame correction, because I've talked about it in my previous videos. Do I have it here? Did I do it on this one? On this chart? Probably not. I think I did it on the MEXC chart. Let me just have a look to see if I can find it. Where's my MEXC chart? Oh God, a lot of brush strokes there. Let me get rid of them. I've got the trend-based fibs. Oh yeah, there it is, the WXY there. So I've been talking about whether this whole thing was one just big gigantic WX. We never had an impulsive move. Just from the first minute we launched, TRVL has been in a higher time frame corrective maneuver. Yeah, that's what I've been talking about. And it makes sense because when I look at the chart, it does look correct. The whole thing looks corrective. Doesn't, for me it does anyway. Like I can't see the crazy impulse, but I do see corrective. I see like a 5-wave down. I see this kind of ABC, which is basically flat, and another kind of down like that, like another ABC. So I am seeing this as a massive WXY. After you get this kind of correction, what do you expect? You expect a massive mega pump. It makes no sense that we should just pump and go full flat there. Is that the pump? For me, that doesn't make any sense, unless that is some kind of wave 1, and then we correct, and then we do it a 3 and 4, 5, and that's how we get out of these lows. Okay, that is possible, but actually what I'm thinking is because this correction has been so deep and so long, and now we have a little bit of time. You see this this fib time that I was talking about. I was talking about the fib time in April, and now I was talking about the fib time in the 3rd week of July. Okay, so we're there at fib time. Is this resistance? Are we into resistance now? It's debatable. I think probably we front ran this, maybe because I restarted the streams, maybe. And that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering that because I restarted the streams, we front run this fib time. So there was an external influencing factor, which is why we pumped a little bit sooner rather than kind of, maybe it should have kind of gone flat here and then we should have pumped correctly. Maybe we're about to pump now, kind of on fib time. And then we have this gap. We have this gap all the way through to the end of December. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, is it possible that we have an opportunity to pump, and to pump type thing, like a crazy pump just on the back of this higher time frame corrective movement, and hit our all-time high target by the end of December, just like that. Okay, let's just have a look at what that would look on the normal chart. Is that even feasible? Let's have a look. It'd be like that. Like that. It would be a mega pump. It would just like be pump, pump, pump. After you have this crazy long downward trend, you have this crazy pump like that. think crazy things do happen in crypto. Yeah. And no one can predict it. And the only thing that I'm thinking to myself is what is going to make us create the environment needed for that kind of crazy price action. And in my mind, the only thing that's going to make that happen is if people have the incentive to buy as much TRVL as possible and never sell. It's like you just have to answer those two questions. Give people a reason to buy as much as possible, right? As much as possible, like literally as much as possible. Like it's on their mind. They need to buy as much as possible and never sell. And the only reason why people would buy something as much as possible and never sell is if there's a mad FOMO rush to buy it. You have to give them the FOMO rush. And why would people rush to buy this token? It's because they believe that it's going to become as valuable as Bitcoin. Really, it really comes down to that final sentence. Like you have to instill a belief in people, to be into people's hearts, into people's minds, that this is going to be as big as Bitcoin. It has that potential. Okay. And so this is the conversation that I'm having with Dtravel right now. How do we change everything to give the wider market that idea, that incentive to buy as much as possible and never sell? Yeah. And they're taking my conversations very seriously, very seriously. It goes back to tokenomics, but I don't think like it isn't just tokenomics. It's also everyone has to be on boards. You have to have the right kind of strap lines and marketing to go hand in hand with the product. The product has to be developed, and it has to be developed really quickly because we don't have much time. Yeah. So as you can see, our window is short. Yeah, we have a really tight window. And ultimately what could happen is that changes and relaunch will be announced first, and then there'll be a massive rush to develop those key features. Once those key features are in developed, then you're going to see a large amount of liquidity come into the market, because that's when people will buy more to stake or to accumulate or to buy and hodl and never sell. Yeah. And so that's the situation. Like in the first instance, I'm thinking to myself, imagine if Dtravel announced a change of tokenomics here, and that tokenomics was a future version of a Bitcoin type tokenomics, a store of value 2.0. Really, that's what's on my mind, a store of value. Yeah. Like this whole project becomes store of value. And it's supplemented by a real world use utility, an application which has a real world use, and effectively the value is coming into the DAO, and then the DAO administers the value, and over time the emissions drop, just like Bitcoin. Then you'd get an initial rush because people would buy the rumor, and that's when you'll get your first push, which would take us really to a nice place because it will give a lot of people an opportunity to make money. Then you'd get this correction, and however that correction plays out, we'd have to see. And then there'd be a mad rush by Dtravel to implement the key features of the application. Very important, because that's how you're going to bring in the liquidity. And once the application features are launched, that's the liquidity comes in, and that drives the price up to astronomical levels, to just breaks through to higher levels. Once that happens, then you're going to get mad FOMO, and then you'll get the final push. Yeah, because of FOMO. FOMO really does kick in at the end of when everything is going parabolic. Yeah. So I've kind of mapped it out. I've mapped out how I envision the future and how we get there. It starts by giving people something that they want to buy as much of and never sell. It's keenly tied to a change of tokenomics, and it's also keenly tied to a change of strategy when it comes to selling Dtravel and marketing Dtravel, because ultimately people aren't going to believe that Dtravel is an Airbnb killer when Dtravel has only 5,000 listings. They're not going to believe that. So it doesn't matter how much you market Dtravel, Who believes that? No one believes that. When Airbnb has millions and we have 5,000, no one will believe we're an Airbnb killer. Okay. But if you give them something like the reminiscent beginnings of a Bitcoin crypto startup at the beginning, they might believe that, especially when you have this emerging real world network that starts to bring value to the token in a Bitcoin based token economy. Okay. When I say Bitcoin based, I mean Bitcoin not based, but Bitcoin tokenomics based, like the idea of the diminishing returns over a period of time. So that's kind of what's on my mind. It's obviously a little bit more developed than what I'm describing now, but really what we're having conversations now isn't about how to get to 3 cents or how to get to 5 cents or how to get to maybe 9 cents or at best 17 cents. The conversations we're having now is how to take Dtravel, TRVL, and smash through to all-time highs at $1.56 in the next 6 months. You know, I'm very serious about this. I'm not kidding. That's why I'm putting in a lot of time, and we're having serious conversations about this. Okay, so just bear that in mind. I'm going to keep this people who follow me updated on the Telegram and on these videos as to the progress of those conversations, but we don't have much time to act. We have to act fast, and so I'm very keen to put as much reserved pressure as possible, not pressure, but reserved pressure, because I don't want to pressure people. I want people to come to the same conclusion for themselves, and ultimately it would be the most amazing recovery from ever if we were able to pull this off, wouldn't it? It'd be the most amazing thing. If anyone accumulates here and we do pull this off, honestly, you'd never have to sell TRVL, because the staking program that we introduce would mean that you'd be with the TRVL that you stake, you'll be making money basically for the rest of your life. Basically, it would be like, it would, generally speaking, it would reward every single person who's invested in TRVL right now forever, and that's what we want. We want to reward every single person now, and that will also give us the fuel for the fire to build the Dtravel network, especially in it would grow really fast, because then Dtravel would have the capital. They'd raise enough capital in the explosive growth of the TRVL token to not only fund the bear market, but also invest and build the real world network, and that would intrinsically add value to the token and the rest of the network, the token economy. So there'd be a kind of a feedback loop which would grow the value of the token in the bear market, and we'd end up with a very bullish correction in the bear market, and then we would see another explosive growth to higher prices. We're having conversations about that now. I'll keep you guys updated. I'm not saying it's going to happen just yet, but this is what's on my mind, and I feel like I'm making some headway with the conversation I'm having. If we do manage to pull this off, we'll probably end up on Coinbase and Binance as well by the end of this run, probably, because it would be such an explosive growth, increase in volume and increase in liquidity. And the other thing is that it wouldn't just be store of value, it would be a chain agnostic store of value. TRVL would be on every single chain, especially Solana, but you could be on every single chain. And so if people perceive TRVL as a chain agnostic store of value, it means that whenever they wanted to store value, instead of transferring it to a wrapped BTC or even to BTC in a centralized exchange, selling and buying, they could just do it on their DEXs, on their decentralized exchange, and they could just buy from Solana. They could just buy TRVL. If people start to perceive TRVL as a store of value type token, as where the value is secured and upheld by the physical real world network, just like Bitcoin was or is, and then that would allow it would create a different narrative. Actually, it would create a very different narrative for us, and instead of trying to shill the Knight protocol, which most people won't understand, we don't have to do that. We'll just say we're just Bitcoin, but better for many reasons. We can explain that. We can explain the reasons why we're better, and why we're the same and better. I think in a market where everyone is looking at Bitcoin and going, damn, I wish I'd invested in Bitcoin 10 years ago, the easiest play would be to sell TRVL as Bitcoin, as a store of value. I think it'd be easier to do that than what we're doing now, than an Airbnb killer or a Shopify version, a new like a version of Shopify for property managed or property rentals. Yeah, I think it'll be a lot easier to do that. So I'm talking to them. We'll have to see what happens. And so just, if you believe in the universe and God and whatever, pray, send your prayers, light a candle, you know, ask for blessings or whatever you do, you know. I'm not saying, I don't know, you know, like send your good energy. Yeah. I honestly believe that everything happens for a reason. And often those reasons are initially to humble us, but also to make us appreciate what happens next. And so all of the struggle that we've faced and the experience of these last 4 years has brought us to this point, to the lows of the lows. And maybe that was needed for us to actually now finally make the changes that are necessary, because now we really are ready to take this to the place that it really ought to be in the future. All-time highs by December. That's on my mind. That literally is on my mind. Okay, not financial advice. But if these ideas are implemented, then I honestly think that anyone who's bought or buying TRVL now will never have to sell, ever. Will never have to sell TRVL, because you would have caught this. You would have caught this right at the lows. If we manage, like, it's just hypothetical, yeah. Like, I like to play around, you know. Like, I like to hypothesize and imagine the future, don't I? But let's just say we do go to all-time highs. That would be a V-shaped recovery from here, but it would be a crazy V right to the all-time high. Not as high as $3, but all the way up to the all-time high. That would be the target. And then what you're looking at is a V-shaped recovery. And the 50 fib would be 9 cents, which would be correct, because then you'd have a bear market correction all the way down to 9 cents. That would be a perfect V-shaped recovery. The V is here. That's the V. That's the V. That's the pump all the way to all-time highs, and that's the V correction. Then what you're looking to do is flip 9 cents into a support zone in the bear market. And that would be very feasible if we were able to create this kind of pump all the way up to all-time highs. And that's really on my mind. Okay, so if it happens, you heard it here first. Okay. If you have any connection with rich people, then now is a good time to start getting them invested, because these are the conversations we're having. Right,